play an important role for our economy. Last year's floods and this summer's drought made it clear that important transitways like the Mississippi River are subject to the whims of Mother Nature. Much of southeast Missouri's agriculture output leaves the region through the river, and it's the SEMO Port Authority's job to get that product onto barges and to markets all over the globe. I'm here now with Dan Overbey. He's the Executive Director of the SEMO Port Authority. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Well, first, let's just talk about some of the basics. How many barges come through the SEMO Port in a given year?
Last year, in terms of tonnage, we had about 800,000 tons. That works out to roughly 500 barges. Sometimes 2 a day is the average, but some days you'll have 7 or 8. Then for a short while, you might not have any.
Now, is this mainly agriculture, or are there other products that come and go on the river?
Primarily agriculture, grain, corn, soybeans, sorghum, wheat, products like that. Fertilizer coming inbound, going out to the farms in the area. We have a wood chip mill that buys hardwood logs, chips them into small chips of wood that goes to paper mills. So we're primarily agricultural. We do have some other products, steel plates, steel coils, dry bulk chemicals, things of that sort.
Now, for the most part, is this output, products leaving the region and going to markets worldwide, or is this products coming into southeast Missouri?
By barge, depends on the product. As you would expect, the grain products typically go down the river, out the Gulf, and to world markets. The fertilizer comes in from domestic sources, sometimes from overseas. The wood chips we mentioned goes to domestic paper mills primarily. So the steel products come sometimes from northern Illinois, which is wonderful, sometimes from China and other overseas markets.
What's the regional economic impact of having its own, for a region to have its own inland waterway port the way that we do here?
It's good. It helps. Out at the port itself, we have about 100 jobs. We have 20 million in investment at the port, 50 million in terms of the different companies. But beyond those 100 jobs, there's probably 150, 200 that are the full-time equivalent of the truck drivers that bring the products in and out. And then you apply a multiplier to that. So it is far-reaching. Our market area extends in terms of the local truck market to western Kentucky, southern Illinois, as far west as West Plains, Salem. That part is great. We own our own small railroad, switching railroad, that connects with Union Pacific, Burlington Northern. In terms of rail traffic, it's a bit surprising, but we go to from, we've had some shipments go to Alaska. We've had some come in from Washington State. We ship some to California, Florida, Vermont, just all over the country, depending on the product.
Now, this summer's big news story was probably the drought that gripped much of the Midwest. How did that affect shipping from the SEMO port?
It did temporarily on different occasions. It's been an inconvenience, I'd say a costly one, to some of the companies there that operate. But we've also been very fortunate in terms of the Corps of Engineers did provide funding this year for dredging, and the St. Louis District did an excellent job, came in a month early, dredged our port, and then went out to take care of the river. So we've been very fortunate. We've managed basically to stay in operation with a few exceptions, while some of the other ports south of us were closed down for a while. And in fact, we've handled some cargo that was destined to them but couldn't be unloaded there.
Now, this summer, the Army Corps of Engineers you mentioned were able to dredge the harbor here, but that was because there was some emergency funding from the floods from last year to allow for that dredging. After this year, will that funding, as far as you know, be available to help ports throughout the Mississippi River to do that annual dredging or biannual dredging?
We've been told by the Corps of Engineers that that's not the case. The Corps has a long list of projects which Congress has given them, and then a fairly short list of available funds. Their budget has been cut the last 2 years. They've told us and 10, 12 other ports down in Memphis District that next year we're basically on our own. We've done that a couple of years previous. One year we were fortunate enough to work with our elected officials and get a grant through the state, but last year we had to take it out of our budget. That puts a crimp on future development projects and expansion plans. But we were very fortunate. There are a number of the other ports that don't have that capability. They're not that developed, and some of them may be shut down temporarily. And if you shut down for 2 or 3 months, a couple of times, a couple of years in a row, that's very hard on your customers, and it's very hard to attract new customers. Some of the folks might leave. Some of the other ports, knock on wood, we hope we can get through it all okay.
Just to give us an example, like how much would it typically cost to do this dredging?
The Corps of Engineers budgets $450,000 a year for our port. We've had it done, depending how much you do and how extensive, around $350,000, which is a pretty good number. The Port of Memphis has a very large harbor down there. They're $5 million a year to dredge them.
Now, right now, in Panama, they're expanding the Panama Canal to allow for larger ships to come through.
Yes.
Will this have any kind of an impact on shipping here in the Midwest when this project's done here in a couple years?
I think it will. A lot of folks focus on the container side of things, the big 40 or 53-foot boxes you see in ships that carry that type of product from Asia to the U.S. In fact, right now it's the season in shipping for Christmas. This year's Christmas is coming across the Pacific Ocean. But a lot of that product does not move up the river. Once it hits a port, it tends to go by truck. West Coast ports, it hits rail, comes to the interior. The river traffic, barge traffic right now is primarily dry bulk products, lower value. When you consider it takes 10 days to get to New Orleans, 2 weeks to come north, that's a little tough on a lot of the products. So, but we will see improvements in the economics of the dry bulk products.
Real briefly, what do you see as some of the areas for growth for the port right now?
I think we'll see more of what we're doing. Dry bulk products, some industrial products, some project cargo, that type of thing. And we do hope to, in the future, we've got plans to add a loop track, which would bring unit trains by rail. That's a solid train, 100 and 120 cars, and that's the most economical form of rail shipment. What we would like to do is combine that with barge shipment, which is even more economical.
Dan Overbey is the Executive Director of the SEMO Port Authority. Thank you so much for coming by.
Yes, thank you. Enjoyed it.
Coming up, we'll talk with the Superintendent of Cape Girardeau Public Schools. That's just ahead on Cape Chronicle.